Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Synergy Music Lessons. Today we'll be looking at Gigue from the RCM Level 3 List A section. Let's get started.
Okay, let's break this down. The first thing we'll want to look at is our key signature and time signature. If we look at this piece, we'll see that we have 1 sharp on the F line. That gives us 2 possibilities, G major or its relative minor, E minor. To figure this out, let's take a look at some of the chords in this piece. When we gather the notes of the first chord, we'll have D, B, and G. We even have a G in the bass clef. These notes actually create a picture-perfect G major triad, which is also the tonic chord of the G major scale. That's 1 point towards the major scale. If we gather the notes in the next chord, we'll have E, C, and G. The left hand has a C. When we rearrange the notes into root position, we can easily see that we have a C major triad. In a G major scale, the C chord is the subdominant, meaning it's the 4th notes in the scale, or more accurately, the 5th notes below the tonic. Either way, for simplicity, they're the same thing. If we look at the next chord, we have another G major triad. This gives us a 1-4-1 progression. This will certainly have a major sound. If we look at this from an E minor perspective, we'll have a 3-6-3 progression. From a minor perspective, this doesn't really fit all that well, and it still will sound major. Also on another note, the minor scale usually has a few harmonic notes here and there. In this case, D sharp would be our harmonic raised 7th. And in this example, we do have a couple Ds, but they certainly aren't sharp, so that's another point towards the major scale. Let's look at the B section of this piece. Here in bar 9, when we gather the notes, we have C, A, and F sharp. This looks like it might be an F sharp diminished triad, which would be the 7th degree of G major. However, when we factor in the bass clef, we also have a D in the chord. With this note, we no longer have an F sharp diminished triad, but rather a dominant 7th chord, which consists of D, F sharp, A, and C. This is the strongest form of the 5th degree in a major scale. And moving to the dominant for development is also a very characteristic aspect of many classical pieces. With all these signs, it's very likely that we're in G major and not the relative minor. But let's look further ahead just to be sure. After exploring the dominant section, we usually return home to the tonic. Let's see if that's true for this piece by checking out what chord we have at the ending. Now let's gather the notes. Here we have G, D, B, and another G. Yep, that's the tonic chord. We've got a G major key signature here. Alright, let's take a look at the time signature. Here we have a time signature of 6/8. So we'll be referring to the strong, weak, weak, medium, weak, weak rhythmic pattern. Let's explore how this affects the music in the first couple of phrases up to bar 4. If we follow the rhythm of 6/8, we'll be placing a little bit of an accent on beats 1 and 4. Let's go ahead and place some accents on the notes right now. Okay, now we've got all the accents in place. Let's see what this sounds like. Do you hear the sound of that rhythmic footprint? Playing in this way will help you express this piece more convincingly and should feel more natural too. Let's see what happens if we try to force an equivalent time signature with a different rhythmic footprints, like 3/4. Just like 6/8, 3/4 will have a rhythmic pattern grouped into 3 pulses, but only one group, not 2 like in 6/8. And 3/4 will be placing accents on beats 1, 2, and 3, but with less emphasis on the latter 2 beats. Let me show you what I mean. Here's what it'll sound like. Sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? It definitely feels a lot more awkward to play this way too. So let's erase these 3/4 accents. Next, let's look at the overall form of this piece. A good hint for finding different sections are the repeat signs. We have a couple here at bar 8. And another one at the ending, bar 16. These repeat signs usually highlight different sections of the music. But to be sure, let's compare the material in the first half up to bar 8 and the second half from bar 9 to 16. The major things we should be looking for are repeated ideas, which includes both rhythm and pitch. For the most part, there really isn't much repetition in this piece, but there are some similarities. Let's compare bars 1 to 4 with 9 to 12. Well, rhythmically, these phrases share some similarities, but it's not exact. And with pitch, it's totally different. The intervals are not even parallel. It's safe to say, at least with this part, that these are separate ideas that share similar rhythms. Now let's look at the fourth system and compare that to the material in bars 1 to 8. It doesn't take much to see that there isn't anything directly the same between these two excerpts. Let's take a look at bar 13 and 14. Here we have a series of repeating dotted quarter note Ds. Throughout the entire A section, there's nothing like this, but it does kind of sound reminiscent of the material in the left hand at bars 1 to 2, and also 5 to 6. Regardless of their similarity, it's not close enough to be considered a repetition of the A section, so it's pretty safe to say that we're dealing with simple binary form here. Alright, next let's get into some practice tips. The way we'll look at this piece is by separating our practice into smaller sections based on musical phrases. One trick to recognizing the phrases for this piece is that they each are separated by a 2-note 16th motif. Let's highlight each of these phrases. With each of our phrases marked, let's use practice loops to familiarize ourselves with the notes and hand movements and also get a head start on muscle memory. Our first phrase covers bars 1 to 4. Let's take a look at the right hand and try to find the most comfortable and efficient way to play this. These are my suggestions. Now, there are no absolute correct finger numbers to use when it comes to playing a piece, but there are patterns that are better than others. And even more importantly, it's important that the fingers we choose for each note don't take away from the quality of sound we want to produce. Sometimes, there are just situations where we need to accept that passages are just going to feel awkward until we practice it enough times and build a little bit of muscle memory. Okay, now let's loop this phrase repeatedly to familiarize ourselves with this material. Remember to start slow and gradually increase the tempo as you build confidence. Try to keep your flow as steady as possible. I'll play a short form demo for you right now, but keep in mind, under normal circumstances, you may find yourself looping this much longer to get it to sound convincing. Now let's repeat this process for the left hand. We've already got some good finger numbers marked here, and even if we improvise for the unmarked notes, you should more than likely be fine. It's not a good habit to mark finger numbers on every single note anyways. Alright, so we're ready to start the looping process. Remember to start slow and gradually increase the tempo. Here's a quick example. The next step is to put these two loops together with both hands. Same idea, start slow and gradually pick up speed. I would definitely suggest starting slower than the hand separates loops. It takes a lot of concentration to coordinate two hands simultaneously. Here's a demo. Great. Okay, so let's take a look at what's coming up next. Do you notice it? Everything is the same until bars 7 and 8. That means we've got almost half of this piece down. So let's just focus on bars 7 and 8 and do some focused practice here. Let's start by filling in some finger numbers. In bar 8, the right hand has a descending lineated D major chord, playing parallel to the left hand. What's more is that these are actually parallel octaves. There are a few ways we can play this chord in the right hand, but by far the most efficient will be with these finger numbers: 5, 3, 2, and 1. If you're having trouble reaching each of these notes, you can glide over each finger as you descend the pattern. This same logic also applies to the left hand. Let's take a look at this gliding motion in action. Great. With that, we've sorted out the main components of practice in the A section. If we move forward to the B section, as we learned earlier, the material is fairly similar, but not exactly the same in any way. The key thing, though, is that there are a lot of similarities in the two sections, most notably being the rhythms, general hand and finger movements, and phrasing. With that in mind, all you really need to do is repeat the practice process we did in the A section. And if you found that pretty straightforward, this will be more of the same. That should do it for this one. Good luck on practice, guys.
That's it for today, guys. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and this is enough to get you started. If you have any other questions, leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys around.